Hi, I'm Chris Yanuszewski, founder of Rebel Commerce Solutions, growth partner to startups helping fearless entrepreneurs exceed their revenue goals. Welcome to the Rebellious Times podcast, where we explore the intersection of human ambition and technology. And today I am delighted to introduce you to Yossi Abraham, President and CEO of Zappix, an AI-powered digital engagement platform that transforms customer interactions. How are you doing, Yossi? Very nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Where are you located today? I know you moved between various locations.
So, our office is in Burlington, Massachusetts, and you see the beautiful site of our parking in the back.
It's a good-looking parking lot. I'll give you that.
Very green.
So thanks for coming on the show. Oh, the episode name today is The Bootstrap Blueprint, Building a Profitable B2B Tech Company Without VC Money. Yossi, I'd love to start with hearing a bit about your background and how you ended up as the CEO and president of Zappix.
Yes, so as you referred to already, I have some international background. I'm originally from Israel. I worked in the high-tech industry for the last 25 years, started in Israel. I was then relocated to London. My wife and I spent about 4 years in London, and then I was asked to relocate again to the Boston area. I've done multiple different roles, started in project management, in service management, PMO, chief of staff, and in the last 15 years, more or less, much more on the business side and marketing, sales, account management, partnerships. I've done multiple different levels of roles, type of roles, and about 7 years ago, I joined Zappix. And since then, I'm managing Zappix as president and CEO.
Fantastic. So you're what they might call an all-rounder. I met several all-rounders in my own career, and they always made me feel bad because they seemed to be able to do anything. Well, I was kind of more focused on the marketing and the sales side. So yeah, I'm always impressed to meet an all-rounder. So one thing I'd love to dig into a little bit today is, well, before we get into that, tell me about your customers. Tell me about your Zappix and what
Yeah.
problem you're solving.
So Zappix, we provide AI-powered digital engagement platform. Basically, we work with large enterprises, both enterprises and healthcare providers and payers, and we help with everything around the engagement, whether it's inbound engagement, meaning calls coming in, interactions coming into their contact centers or to the enterprise, and outbound. How can we support their need to engage with their customers, residents, patients, members, and using our intelligent outreach platform? And we are we are mainly coming to solve the problem of how can we improve the customer experience much more efficiently from a cost perspective, from increasing the engagement level, and really have a better outcome for them from a revenue perspective, thanks to that.
Got it. Fantastic. And what would be a use case within the healthcare industry?
So an example can be everything around reminding patients that they have a referral but have yet to book an appointment. So patient might receive a referral from their family physician, but they didn't book an appointment. And currently what access centers do, they pick up the phone, they call, you have a referral, you haven't booked. Very inefficient manner, very costly engagement. And what we do, we automate and digitize this entire interaction. We have 3 or 4 multi-touch, omni-channel engagements, visual, that we tell the patients, you have it. This is why it's important. This is why it's important to do your breast cancer analysis or a colonoscopy or whatever the physical therapy. This is why it's important. This is why it's important to do it with us, not with us, Zappix, but with our client. So we prevent leakage. And this is how you can schedule it. Very, very simple way to schedule it, either self-service or we connect them with the exact right person that can schedule it for them. So that's, for example, one use case. Other use cases can be digital intake. How can we automate all of that instead of sending letters or. So we do a lot of outreach in that aspect. And we can speak a bit later about specifically healthcare and enterprise.
Yeah. So very much on the communications side, then solving communications, making sure that.
Communications with a linkage to solve a real use case end to end. So that's very important. It's not just to send a text message. It's to solve the full use case around that.
Got it. Fantastic. In terms of working in healthcare, obviously you're dealing with people, you're dealing with people's health. Are there any specific challenges around healthcare in terms of it being regulated and being you kind of not overstepping the line to giving maybe advice where only a doctor is allowed to kind of talk about those sorts of situations and make recommendations?
Of course. So healthcare is highly regulated, as we all know, and you need to somehow really pay attention to the balance between providing too much information or providing information that is you want to really restrict that versus to provide the right information to the right person at the right time in order to really solve that immediate need. And an example of that is something we do, for example, with the endoscopy teams. Before a colonoscopy, you need to prepare 7 days before, 4 days, 3 days, 2 days. What typically happens today is that you get a letter to your home or to your EMR in the whatever portal they're using, MyChart for Epic or others, and then you as a patient need to remember to 7 days before I need to stop taking that medication. 4 days before I need to start low residue diet. 3 days before I need to do this. What we do, we break it into bite-sized instructions, all visual with images, videos, and so on. And now we send the patient the instructions for that specific time, for that specific procedure, for that specific prep for the procedure via the contact method that they prefer. And because of that, we are able to dramatically reduce no-shows, late cancellations, and so on.
Fantastic. And the results of that are people take better care of their health and do the
Yes.
things they're supposed to do, right? I'm notoriously bad for that. My wife is always saying to me, go and get a checkup. And I do everything I can to avoid going to the doctor. But I'm sure if I got a notification to say that there was a reason for me to go and
Yes.
here's what I have to do and it explains it.
Make it simple. Make it as simple as possible for you to book the appointment. You don't need to wait 20 minutes on the line. Make it simple for you to book it. And after you book it, give you the instructions, where to park, what do you need to bring with you, what to expect. Let's say that you have a more complex procedure. What to expect. Send them a video the day before. What to expect when you arrive. This is where you're going to park. This is where the receptionists are located. This is what will happen to you in the first 30 minutes. Think about that from a patient experience point of view.
Love it. Fantastic. So switching gears here a little bit,
Yeah.
you mentioned when we met, you talked about the business becoming profitable within 7 years. It's not often I speak with a startup founder and they bring up the subject of profitability. So I'd love to kind of hear your story on how you've structured the business and the unique aspects to how you funded it over the last 7 years and got to a point where in the traditional model businesses ideally have become profitable. Crazy concept, right?
So I joined Zappix about 7 years ago when Zappix was almost pre-revenue, and it was with a focus of a B2C. It had a B2C focus, less of a B2B. And in my discussions with the owner, we agreed that it has to shift to B2B. This is where there is, first of all, revenue, and second of all, the engine of Zappix, the core of Zappix. I loved it. We had an amazing solution that we can provide digital, visual, self-service, and I have a desire for really transforming customer service in previous companies, and attaching that with a synergetic value of that with the right technology, I found very appealing, and that's why I joined Zappix. So the first couple of years was all really about transforming a company from a B2C company to a B2B, scalability, operability, serviceability, security. while we start to build a go-to-market engine. So how do you start to put the name out and all of that while we are bootstrapped, completely bootstrapped, self-funded by the owner and his fund, but very, very minimal investment in marketing and sales and everything there. Build the product, build the portfolio, build the platform. And then we started to grow by a lot of guerrilla marketing, direct sales, picking up the phone, doing emails, going to some local shows and conferences, and getting the name out there. And it was always with a mindset. I think it all starts with a mindset of profitable growth. And that's a mindset of, yes, you won't have the 200% year over year growth with that mindset, but you will reach profitability after several years. So it was always a capital efficient growth mindset.
Absolutely. Very interesting. And a lot of businesses out there struggle, a lot of startups struggle for product market fit, and some, do get financing and manage to convince VCs to invest money. But when you're bootstrapped, it kind of guarantees that you do have product market fit if you're profitable, right? Customers are using your product, they're paying for it, and so it's a good position.
Yes. So yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. When we spoke before the call, we talked a little bit about AI and implementing AI within businesses, and it was interesting that you commented to me about your perspective on how and when to use AI, and in an environment where it seems that every company feels desperate to implement AI solutions for fear of being left behind.
Yes.
I'd love to kind of revisit your perspective on this, because I think it's something that many business owners are trying to figure out at the moment, and maybe there's an alternative to following the herd.
So first of all, it's a bit overwhelming today with all the changes, and you read multiple articles a day about updates to this LLM and that one, and Claude came up with this today, and OpenAI came with this, and you hear about unicorns of 2 people, etc., etc. So it's a bit overwhelming, and you might say, okay, how do you cope with all of this rapid changes that are happening in the market today? So that's first of all, it's overwhelming. But when you look at it, when you zoom out a bit, you see, okay, what is the problem we're coming to solve? And if you understand the problem you're coming to solve, you don't always need the flashy Gen AI kind of things. If you're solving a problem of someone calling into the call center and asking, what is the status of my claim, for example, for a healthcare payer, you don't need flashy AI to do that. What you need is a secured way to retrieve that information and provide a frictionless customer experience to solve that problem. Do you need now RPA, robotic process automation? Probably. Do you need some level of integration to the backend? Of course. And so if you understand the problem you're trying to solve, then maybe you can do it without all of that very complicated, less mature AI that is available today. And again, we are working with very large enterprises or with healthcare systems that compliance is critical. You have to safeguard all the responses coming back from the technology. So there is a concern there about implementing AI at full speed now. So what we feel that is happening in the market, at least in the last 1 year or 18 months, is many companies are interested in AI, and they want to run some pilots, but they don't take full decisions about implementing a full solution. We call it pilotitis. So it's like a tendency to pilot and pilot and pilot, which is stalling a decision to move forward with proven systems that can really solve the problem now. And that's a challenge we need to overcome. How can you use a system that can solve your problem today, that has the right foundation to be also ready for the next 12 to 18 to 24 months without any forklift upgrade?
Love it. Very well articulated perspective there. Thank you very much for that. Let me see. So, in terms of let's move back to the bootstrap perspective. What would be your recommendations to startups that maybe want to try and, go down that path, or maybe have not managed to get funding in the way that they prefer to? How would you advise them to approach growing or funding their business to scale?
So I'm going back to solve the problem that the customers needs. And when you solve a problem and you start to get some responses from the market, and the responses is, yes, it's interesting, I'm willing to sign a contract and I'm willing to pay you, then you see that's market validation. But that's step number one. So understand the market, understand your customers, understand their pain points, and come with a solution that might be a phased approach. Let me solve this problem now so I can get some revenue that can fund different things. Afterwards, you need to start to see, okay, build the customer success capabilities in the company that can maintain those customers, that can reduce churn dramatically. So for us, we are passionate about customer success because to win a customer in enterprise is costly. So you don't want to lose a customer after 1 or 2 years. You want to maintain them for 3 to 5 years. So really build that customer obsession almost from a customer experience point of view to provide them with the best service, and then try to find ways that you can land and expand, that you can add more value to them and get more revenue. And then the next part afterwards is, okay, now how do you scale? After you have the foundation, how do you scale? And that's either by finding the right channel sales, the right partnerships, the right business development channels, to start to scale faster and very efficient. You lose some control. When you do channel sales, you lose some control on the sales processes, but you have the ability, if it's successful, to go and to scale much better. And then cash flow. That's when I wake up in the morning. That's when I finish the day. I'm always, cash flow is a king, and that's how we manage the company. How we look at decisions, whether to hire, whether to invest in certain things. Do we expect certain business to come in? Do we expect a certain business to come, be delayed a bit, and so on?
Yeah, very interesting. So limited resources. You've got to manage them extremely well. You've got to manage your cash flow. You talked a bit about alternative or guerrilla marketing approaches as well. Are there any things that kind of surprised you or worked particularly well for you as you were kind of hustling to get the name out there?
So it's there isn't anything that I can say stand out there. It's really a lot about grinding, persistence, doing. Before ChatGPT, we spent a lot on original content that we wrote. We wrote ebooks. We did a lot of blogs and white papers. Now everybody does it with ChatGPT, so it maybe diluted a bit. But when we did it 6-7 years ago, it was really profound. And we, for example, wrote an ebook about the consumerization of healthcare. How healthcare is now taking inputs from the best consumer brands out there. And because we supported some of the best consumers in the world, we were able to tell them we're bringing the best CX into PX, into patient experience. So bring that original content, being persistent, grind.
Fantastic. Love it. Love the hustle.
Yes, always hustle.
Always hustling. That's what I'm doing. Always hustling. I'd love to kind of close out here with getting your perspective on what the future holds, both for Zappix and for the customer engagement space as a whole. Like how do you see the next few years playing out?
So Bill Gates says that we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years, and we always underestimate the changes that will happen in the next 10 years. And I think when I'm looking the next 2 years, I think there will be, first of all, there's market volatility and uncertainty because of macroeconomic things and so on. So there is a challenge now. Many companies are not rushing to take decisions to make changes and invest, but I think there is still a lot of potential to use automation, to use RPA, to use some elements of AI in digital engagement and to implement them. So I don't foresee a lot of radical changes in the next 18 months. I think there will be a lot of pilotitis, but I don't see radical changes. I do see radical changes in the next 5 to 10 years. I think AI will be very impactful in 5 to 10 years after we overcome, from a technology point of view, some of the challenges we have today with hallucinations and compliance, etc., etc. I cannot tell you how it will look, but I think it will be much more driven by AI agents rather than human agents. We'll need to find how we coexist between certain functions in organizations like customer care and customer service and contact centers. How do they coexist with AI agents? There will be impact, unfortunately, to several positions, which I'm concerned about. But hopefully we can retrain and we can shift some of those positions into new stuff. The human being is very adjustable, and the only question is, can we adjust so quickly as a rapid changes in AI? So I'm cautiously optimistic. I would say that, and so that's for the market and AI. For Zappix, we continue to hustle and to grind, and we'll have some nice growth this year and continue to expand the portfolio of services. We're working now on multiple different AI capabilities like predictive AI and RAG as a service and several other things that are in the works now that we're starting to offer to our clients. And I'm very optimistic for the future of Zappix. I think we provide an amazing service to our clients with clear ROI and clear impact. So I'm sure that we can continue to do that.
Fantastic. Well, it's been amazing having you on the podcast. I'm looking forward to following your story as Zappix evolves and brings more technology to the customer engagement space. And have a wonderful rest of your week, Yossi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris.
Cheers.